Why hello, Blair again of Chaos Costumes to teach you more about Nomad. I don't know about you, but the holidays totally burnt me out, so guess what you're getting? A tool tutorial. I absolutely love making alpha stamps this way, and I cannot wait to show you how. So without further ado, let's go. So if you want to make clean and professional stamps that look like this, there is an easy way to do it in Nomad and Nomad alone. First, we're going to start out with a tube, put on the grid with the little magnet, and I'll add some more points here and increase the division. Then I will change the profile to be scale-like. Then I'll change the radius and turn on B-spline, just so it's nice and soft curves. And I'll turn off the grid so I have more control over these nodes. But now you can see from the side, we have one scale. So we're going to add an array and increase the count to 3 and push them together. So there's a little bit of overlap, but not a bunch. Then we'll look at it from the side and tilt it just a smidge. And realizing this point is not pointy enough, so I'll go ahead and fix that. Now that I have these 3 scales, I'll select both of those things and clone them and drag them down and over. But I'm realizing that the overlap isn't quite what I want it to be, so I'm just going to get rid of what I just did. And just smush together those scales a little bit more. Then I can go ahead and clone both the array and the tube and drag it down and over. Now it's nicely covering up the top edge. Now I can select the first array and tube and clone that and drag it down. And take that middle section and we'll select the array and tube and once again clone it and drag it down. Now we're going to do the magical part, which will make this an alpha stamp. We're actually going to go up here and then click on debug, yes, debug, and click on height map. And it shows the black and white version of what you're looking at in height map. Now we can use this to make a stamp. So we're just going to click on render up here, make sure you have square selected, and export the PNG. And save the image, and we're done. Isn't that cool? In order to change the definition of the stamp, you can change the focus, but I liked how it was when we saved it. Well, let's move on to another shape, which would be either a mermaid scale or a dragon scale. So we're going to get rid of pretty much everything, minus the initial tube. And I'll just clone that shape off to the side here, make it a little smaller, and rotate it a bit. And then I'll just force symmetry here of the shape, just so it's on both sides. And there we go, we have another scale shape. So what I'll do is just join those two and add an array again. Make it a count of 3 and push them together. Then we'll take that, both the array and tube, and clone it and drag it down and around. See, the sky's the limit with all these shapes. I'm really excited to play around with it a little more. And if you stick around to the end, I will show you what all of these stamps look like. We're just essentially rinsing and repeating, making sure to select the array and the tube and clone it. You don't have to worry about them not touching. Now we'll just go back into the debug and select the height map, and we're going to change the focus of these guys. Centered in the screen a little bit. I want them to be a little darker around the edges here, and then go in and export the square. I'll just turn off the height map one more time, and I will show you the next technique. This time we are going to make a stone-like texture. So I'm going to increase the division of this sphere and validate it. Then I can go in with symmetry turned off and just start carving away. Here I'm using the crease tool. And then I'll go in with the flatten tool. Then go back in with the crease tool, a lot smaller. Add some more lines. And flatten that out, just playing with it back and forth until you get enough texture. Then I'm going to go in with the brush tool, but I am going to change the stroke spacing to 400%. And I'll subtract that brush so I can get a texture. I'll turn down the intensity. There we go. And now I can just add in these little dimples here to get a rock texture. You can zoom in and out to make the brush even smaller or bigger, but I'm noticing the geometry is getting really stretched out, so I'm going to remesh this. Now I can go back in with finer detail. I can go back in with the crease tool and just re-add some more details. Now that we have this vague rock texture, then we can go back into the debug and the height map, and we'll change the focus, but it's a little peaked in the middle, and I'm not super fond of that. So what I'm going to do is turn off the height map and see what we're working with, and that's egregiously pointy, so let's fix that with the move tool. Now I can go back in with the height map, and we can see a lot more detail. Now I can go ahead and export it and save it. Now we will get rid of that sphere, turn off the height map, and I'm going to show you how I will do a fabric. So we're going to zoom out pretty far with the tube, turn on the grid, make sure the magnet is enabled, and make it pretty long. We will wind up using this grid as a means of making everything even. Now look from the right and start pushing stuff around. And I'll turn on B-spline to make those curves a little softer. I'm just going every other line on this grid, making a little zigzag, and I'll increase the division while I'm here. And what I'll do is add an array, but we're going to do this more meticulously. So for the size, we're going to do 10 units, and for the count, I put 5 here, but I did my math wrong. What I want is a count of 6. Then all of those little tubes are lined up with the grid. Then I'll take the array and tube, and I'll clone that, and then move it over by tapping the arrow by 1, and then move it up by 1. Now I have the first part of the weave. Now I'll take all 4 of those items and clone them, and then turn on the snapping to 90 degrees, and rotate that to the side there, and line that up. Now your weave is weaving. I don't want to admit how much time it took for me to figure this out. Like, where does these waves go? How does this work? But I will teach you what I've learned from my trial and error. Now that I have the weave weaving, I'll turn on the height map and then have the focus show what I'm looking at here. And I want to cut off top and bottom so that's not captured in the stamp. And then make my stamp with the square and export that. Now to finish this off, I'm just going to keep one tube and I'll show you how I would make stitches. So we'll turn off the height map, keep this one strand, and to that strand I will add a torus. And I'll place this torus in the divot and increase inner and outer radius. Turn off snapping and rotate it just a little bit. Now that I have this torus sitting approximately where I want it, I'll just clone this up, but I will change the pivot to align up and down. And I'll make this thread a little bit thinner. And I'll actually make this a little bit taller. So when you see it from the height map, it's a little bit more contrasted. Now I can scooch that torus around to fit in that little divot there. Maybe making this thread a little thinner. Now I can get that torus to match up nicely. Now I can go in with the torus whose pivot is fixed and just clone it up into each one of those little crevices. And since I'm lazy, I'll just take all of those toruses, clone them, and drag them down. And that last one I will clone downwards. Now I can go in with the debug height map, cut off the bottom there, and then change the focus and export those as a PNG. And now I have little stitches. Now I'll show you what all of these stamps look like. So I'll just get rid of all this nonsense, turn off the height map, and let's make a new sphere. Hello, sphere. We meet again. But I'll turn up the division so it's nice and smooth, and I'll validate that so we can see what we're working with here. I'll just go in with the stamp, and these textures I will import. So we'll import our new photos. So we'll take all this nonsense, and I'll actually voxel remesh this sphere even tighter. The higher resolution your surface, the better the stamp outcome is going to be. But we will start with these scales and turn off symmetry. And there you go. Sweet scales, just like that, designed solely in Nomad. Now we'll go in for our dragon/mermaid scales. just so clean and so cool that we can make it solely in Nomad. Now we will go in with our rack. And these edges leave a lot to be desired. It's a little too harsh for me. So what we're going to go in and do is change the fall off. And the fall off is going to be low like this with edges completely flat so that it's a little softer and you can overlap them with not as much delineation. Now you have that sweet rock texture. And we'll go in with our weave. And since I have the fall off gentle along the sides, it's not stamping square. But you can line it up perfectly if you want. But I'm lazy, so I'm totally fine with just kind of stamping willy-nilly. You get the point. Looks like fabric. Enough. And then finally, our stitches. And they're not bad. I do not like how harshly it falls off here. If you are making these stamps with 2 programs like Procreate, you can Gaussian blur it, but here you can kind of smooth it, which is not so bad. And to blend out the edges, you can smooth it down a bit. It is a little tedious, but it's still faster and easier than trying to sculpt this. The stamp itself, you can make it smoother. I invite you to play around with the concept. It was easy, right? It's like stupid easy. And I'm glad I can share with you this information. Who would have thought that the height map is in the debug menu and then you can use that to make alpha stamps? I didn't figure it out by myself. I had help and I want to pass that help on to you. But if you have any ideas or any questions, please leave a comment down below. I do read all of them. If you like what I do and you want to see more, like the video. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Every little bit counts. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks.